So prepare now because eventually this is going to happen. Oh, you're the boy that cried wolf. That's fine. That's fine. If you want to say I'm the boy that cried wolf, that's fine. But guess what? That wolf eventually came. Hello, YouTubers. Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been infiltrated in my email, not just the Alaska Prepper Intel email, but my other one, with people telling me about a video that's been going around that the government is storing a whole bunch of food in like underground, this huge underground bunker. That's the one I saw. And I'm not saying that they're not. I'm pretty sure that they are, because I've stated in the past, and I still stand by this, is that the government, be it the US government or any other government around the world, they are the biggest preppers in the world. They try to tell their people, hey, prep for a week or 2 weeks, just in case something happens, but they are prepping. Why are they prepping? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's because they can see what's coming. I've often stated in the past that the government pundits that you see in front of the screen, they're not stupid. They're very intelligent. They really are. But they use their intelligence for bad instead of good. But they're very intelligent, and they do have a plan. And for people that say, well, this was never planned, it's just happenstance, right? It's just coincidence. Ladies and gentlemen, if the government isn't planning for something big, why would governments all over the world be prepping? And not just prepping with food, but prepping with everything else. Why are government agencies ordering all of these medical supplies that are being ordered and wiping them off the shelves from wholesalers? Why are governments all over the world buying gold? Well, I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to talk to you about this. This is not a video about food hoarding by the government or any of that stuff. You should be prepared. You should have what you need in order to survive a certain number of months, preferably a year or more, that if you can't leave your house for a month or 2 or 3, because there's just nothing in the stores for you to buy. Right? Just for that simple reason that you should have enough of those things stored away in your home to be able to live without having to go shopping at a supermarket. And if you're not there yet, slow and steady wins the race. But this is what I see happening. I came across this article right here. The market is headed for a tinderbox time bomb that will be worse than the 1929 crash, Black Swan fund manager says. Now, we've heard this all over the place. We've heard this from different economists and things like that. But the thing that I find interesting about this specific warning is this right here. Brace for a recession and stock market crash akin to 1929. Universa Investments warned in a client note. This was a warning that they were putting out to their clients, and somewhere or another they got leaked and it made it out here in the media space. The fund has long predicted a financial crash and warned that rising debt levels pose a time bomb. Let me tell you what I think is going to happen. The market is going to continue to go up, I believe, in the short term. And I could be 100% wrong, but just using common sense and taking a look at the things that are going on, you can see that although the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, does it make too much sense that the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates, but that the 10-year bond and the 30-year bond that they're lowering? That doesn't make too much sense. That the more that the Fed is raising, that the more that these bonds, and bonds is what the United States government uses to borrow money. They issue bonds for fiat currency, and then the holder of that bond is promised a certain percentage rate. That doesn't make too much sense to me. That they're heightening interest rates, but the interest for borrowing money is going down. Does that make sense to you? Well, the only conclusion that I can make, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is such an appetite for U.S. bonds out there, is that appetite is not coming from your regular investor, that it's probably coming from within the government itself. And you all know, if you've been with me for a while, that I think that the Federal Reserve and the government are one and the same. Although they say they're not, I believe that they are, that they work together. So what I'm saying is that I think that nobody wants to buy U.S. debt. There are countries that are dumping U.S. debt, but still interest rates go down. And when interest rates go down on bonds, it means that there's a big appetite for those bonds. A lot of people are wanting to buy it because they want to get into that market. To me, I think that it's the Federal Reserve that is buying those bonds. And for those of you that don't know, the Federal Reserve has two ledgers. They have a public ledger where you can see what it is that's on there, and then they have a private ledger where the public can't see. I wonder what that public ledger would be saying about all of these bonds that are being bought at such a low rate when the Federal Reserve's fund rate is higher than the actual bonds themselves. So here it says, get ready for a tinderbox time bomb that will even be worse, or that will be even worse than the 1929 stock market crash. The manager of the Black Swan hedge fund warned this week. And I'm going to tell you why this is so important. AP, I'm not in the stock market. Who cares? Trust me. When this happens, and eventually it will, like I said, the stock market, in my opinion, in the short term, is going to go up. It is going to continue to go up. Right? Because it's all about the debt market. It's all about the bond market. Right? However, it's going to get to a point where it's going to reach its ceiling and then it is going to crash. What are they doing? I haven't watched this guy. I forget what his name is. Kaiser or something like that. I forget his name. But he's always saying, buy, 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 right? Buy, everything, buy. Everything. We're in a bull market, buy, 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 right? And then things crash. Just like he did back in 2008. With Bear Stearns, I believe it was. He was telling everyone, buy, buy, buy. And not more than a day or two later, it had crashed and then it went bankrupt. And everyone that was still in it, that was following his advice, was buying, buying, buying. They lost pretty much everything that they had in there. And as well, you can see that the collateral damage from what happened in 2008 was that mainly it was the people who got poor, you know, your average wage earner, who lost their homes, who lost their pensions, who lost their 401ks, etc., etc. So when this goes down, it's going to affect a lot of people, even if they're not in the stock market. Why? Because it will be a liquidity crisis. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that, because it's going to affect everyone in the world, even if you don't have 1 cent vested in the stock market. The Black Swan author, Nassim Taleb, who called the financial crash that spurred the 2008 recession, in a recent letter to its investors, the fund warned the economy was headed for another financial collapse that would mirror the market crash leading to the Great Depression. Not the Great Recession, right, of 2008, but the Great Depression, ladies and gentlemen. And people that lost money during the Great Depression, if they stayed in the stock market, they were not made whole again, nominally speaking, not taking into consideration how much purchasing power they lost in 26 years. But it took them about 25, 26 years to be made whole again, just nominally, right? Not counting the 54% purchasing power that was lost during that time. So it took a lot longer, really, than 24, 25, 26 years. Here he says it's objectively the greatest tinderbox time bomb in financial history. Why is he saying tinderbox? Well, I can only speculate, but the reason he's saying tinderbox, it means that any little thing can spark it off. Any small thing, any black swan event can spark this off. Greater than the late 1920s and likely with similar market consequences. His bearishness recently has largely been due to the last decade of the Federal Reserve's ultra-low interest rate policy, which flooded markets with liquidity and fueled excessive borrowing. And that is what happens when you allow an entity to control the value of money. The value of money should be controlled by the actual free market. Not by any one entity saying, okay, today a dollar is going to cost you 3% or 5%, to borrow. It should be controlled by the free market. And he says that because of this liquidity, i.e. free money in many cases, when people were allowed to borrow at 0% interest or cheap money, it's created a credit bubble. He said that predicting it would eventually burst and spark a catastrophic market failure. And why is that, ladies and gentlemen? Let's get into this. This is not that much longer, so I'll go ahead and leave this link in the description of the video or on a pinned comment, so you can revisit it if you like. So there is so much money, and I'm going to call it money instead of fiat currency, and there are so many derivatives, right? And derivatives are like a bet. It's a bet on a bet on a bet, and it can be infinite. There can be bets going on infinitely on one thing. Well, that money doesn't exist, right? Most of the money that's in the stock market right now doesn't exist. It's borrowed money. It's money that was invested on leverage, meaning that they only needed a fraction of what they wanted to invest in the stock market in order to invest on it. And then the rest is on leverage. It's borrowed money. And most of that money, if not all of it, doesn't exist. It's nowhere to be found, right? So what's going to happen when we have a stock market crash that equals that of 1929? People are going to need to pay off those debts. Well, where are they going to get the money? They're going to sell, everything's going to be on sale. Even gold and silver is going to go down in price because all of these ETFs that there are out there, all of this paper gold and paper silver that there is out there right now is being hoarded by ETF managers, right? So that they can use that liquidity once the market crashes, or if they lose money on a stock here or there, they can use that liquidity to pay whatever they leveraged into the market, right? Whatever they borrowed to play in the market. But where's the money going to come from? See, the Fed is going to have to start, if they want to avert this crisis, which they won't be able to, they're going to have to start printing so much money that it's literally going to make the dollar worthless. Unless the system just completely collapses and the US defaults and we start with something new. Those are really the only choices that we have here. So am I saying that the market is going to crash tomorrow? Absolutely not. I think it's going to go higher. It's going to go higher, but it's going to meet a ceiling and then it's going to drop like a rock. And when it drops like a rock, even if you have no money in the system, even if you have no stocks, it's going to affect you greatly. And this is why you have to prepare. So for example, let's just start with a loaf of bread. How does a loaf of bread get on your dinner table if you purchase one? Or even if you purchase the flour to make it yourself? Well, it starts off with a farmer who more than likely has a mortgage on their farm. And whether they have a mortgage on their farm or not doesn't really matter. Let's say it starts off with a farmer. Well, that farmer, most farmers in the United States, even if they're large corporate farmers, they have to borrow money at the beginning of the season in order to go ahead and buy seed. They have to borrow money in order to go ahead and buy fuel. They have to borrow money for their equipment because most of their equipment is also mortgaged or they have a note on their equipment, right? So they need to borrow that money in order to make those payments, in order to buy the seed, in order to buy the fertilizer, in order to buy the fuel, in order to pay their labor, right? And then once they plant that seed, they have to borrow money again for fuel and all of these things that they have to pay their electricity bills, their water bills, whatever. Then they get to go out there and harvest those seeds. And then they transport those seeds to a wholesaler. Well, when the wholesaler pays the farmer, they borrow that money to pay the farmer. And then once they pay the farmer and they have their seeds, they process it and they put it in trucks to be delivered to a producer of whatever it may be. And then they take that truck and the truck driver borrows money for their truck. Right now I'm speaking in generalities, because I'm sure there's a truck driver out there somewhere or a farmer somewhere out there that's completely debt free. But I'm speaking in generality. And this happens along the entire chain of that loaf of bread. The truck driver takes it to a processing facility where they turn it into flour, and then they take that flour and they package it, and then they put it on another truck that takes it to a processing facility where they turn it into bread or biscuits or whatever. Then they package it, and then they take it to the supermarket where the supermarket puts it on the shelf, and then you go and you purchase it. And a lot of people nowadays in the United States of America are actually dipping into their credit cards in order to just be able to eat. So even the end consumer, the American consumer, is borrowing money in order to be able to buy the stuff off the shelf of the supermarket. Where all of those middleman players, I guess you can call them, from the farmer all the way to the supermarket shelf, they all need a credit. All right? They all need a credit. Why? Because credit gives them liquidity. It allows them to get what they need. Well, when there is a big crash in the market, it's going to be what is a liquidity issue, because we have so much money out there in space. We have so many zeros and ones out there representing money, i.e. fiat currency. that there's not going to be enough of it. And when I say representing money, I mean debt. All of this debt that's out there, because a dollar bill is a debt note, okay? And a lot of people don't understand that. A dollar bill is nothing more than a promissory note to you that you can purchase something with it later on, that the government uses as a tool to inflate away your purchasing power. That's the best description that I can give you of a dollar bill. So even if you have nothing vested in the market, when we have a liquidity issue, you're not going to be able to get any food, because there won't be any food to be had. Why? Because we live in a credit-based economy. So having a stock of everything that you need, everything, ladies and gentlemen, get it little by little, slow and steady wins the race. Having a stock of all of these things that you need, right, is a great idea. Learning to grow your own food, having your own chickens, which are net zero, by the way. If you didn't see the video that I did about on how chickens are actually net zero carbon emitters, take a look at the video that I'll leave it right here if you haven't watched that, because everyone in America should have 4 to 12 chickens, and then global warming would go away. But anyways, I digress. So that's why it's so important that you understand what's going on in the market, because the market is fake. Why is the market fake? Why do I call the market fake? Take a look at this. Take a look at these two charts right here. I'm going to put them right next to me so that you can take a look at them. All right. I visited these two charts. I think it was on yesterday's video for maybe a couple of minutes or so. And this here chart is the strength of the dollar, right? The value of the dollar, how it's gone down over time. Okay. And then this here chart is a chart of the Dow Jones Industrial, right? And the stock market, right? The one that almost everyone follows. And if you take the value of the dollar over time, this is from like 1975. If you look at the value of the dollar over time, and if you take this chart and you invert it, look at this. You can see that the correlation between the stock market going up and the value of the dollar going down is very similar. Which means what? That the cheaper that the dollar is, the higher that the stock market goes, because just like bread, just like apples, all right, just like anything that you buy, the cheaper that the dollar is, the more dollars that it takes you to buy something. So you can see the correlation between the stock market and the value of the dollar. Why has the stock market gone up so high? Because the dollar is worth almost nothing. It's only worth about 3% or 2.5% of what it was initially worth when it first came out in 1913. That's why the stock market is going so high. And the stock market will continue to go high. Why? Because the dollar is going to continue to lose purchasing power. But what's going to happen when the market goes down? When the market goes down, won't the dollar get stronger? Yes, the dollar will get stronger. However, where are you going to find them? It'll get stronger for a small period of time, but then the Fed's going to have no choice but to turn on those printing presses like crazy in order to make all of those dollars that don't exist, that are needed in the system in order to give it liquidity. Then everything is going to get so expensive that all of the dollars that you've worked for your whole life, all of those dollars that you've saved, that you have in a mattress somewhere or in your banking accounts, your checking account, savings account, those dollars are going to become so worthless that even if we did have food in the supermarkets, you wouldn't be able to buy them. Think of a life where bread is $27, $40 a loaf. Think of a life where gasoline, if we can get it, is $50 a gallon. That's what it would be like, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm 100% wrong. I'm not an economist or anything like that. I'm just a regular guy who likes to take a look at these things because these are things that can affect everyone in our nation. And I'll leave it off with this. Do you think that that government that's putting away all of this food in all of these underground caves and stuff like that, do you think that they're putting it away for you, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, they are. They're putting it away for you. But why? Because they can see what's coming. And what's it going to cost you? How much of your freedoms is going to cost you to get some of that food that they're putting away that they purchase with your tax dollars? It's a big sham. We have been hoodwinked by government for my entire life at least, and probably for the entire lives of everyone that's been here. So what can you do? You can protect yourself. If you have, I'm not a financial advisor, if you have excess wealth, meaning wealth that is outside of you having all of your preps that you're going to need for a long time. I'm going to say for at least a year, right? Because most people can't even imagine having enough food for a year. You're going to need it. If you don't, if you already have that, if you have all of the things that you're going to need, batteries, shoes. All right, my wife's already buying clothes for Michael that are, 1 year, 2-year-old clothes. We already got him a little jacket, a winter jacket for when he's 2 or 3. If you have room to put those things away, get them now while you can actually get them. Because if we enter a liquidity crisis, we're not going to be able to get stuff like we normally do now, especially the crisis that we're going to be heading into. Yes, they're going to try to bring in a CBDC, a centrally banked digital currency, and who knows what's going to happen with that. I think people will accept that as well. Right? But we are being set up for a really big fall, and it is we the people that are going to feel that the most. So prepare now. If you have excess wealth, what I like to do is get some silver, because silver has been manipulated to the downside, nominally speaking, for so very long that eventually they're not going to be able to do it anymore. They've been doing their best, and they've been doing a good job at keeping the nominal price down. But if you've never held an ounce of silver in your hand, go ahead and go buy a couple ounces of silver and just hold it in your hand. That's what real money feels like. It's real. It's not fake and full of air like the dollar and every fiat currency that has ever existed is. So prepare now, because eventually this is going to happen. Oh, you're the boy that cried wolf. That's fine. That's fine. If you want to say I'm the boy that cried wolf, that's fine. But guess what? That wolf eventually came. So you can say that if you like. I'm getting prepared the best that I can, and I hope that you are too. Having said that, God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.